Monday, November 13th, 2023, meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. We're doing this as a hybrid meeting with Zoom. So first, we need to do a roll call or check everybody is connected and talking to us. Can you do that?
All right. Roll call of the members. Mr. Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Wood.
Here.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Here.
Mr. Hassinger.
I'm here.
Mr. Robbins is present. And as always with our roll call, our staff, Fiona Coughlin, Town Planner.
Here.
And Natalia Allward, Office Manager.
Present.
Excellent. All present and accounted for, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We do this like the usual Zoom meeting handling. I guess you raise hand or something like that if you're someone out there.
Raise hand on Zoom if you wish to speak up.
Okay. First item on our agenda is, as always, public input. This is a chance for members of the public who want to speak to us about something to have a few minutes to do so. If it needs to be within the scope of our responsibilities. Is there anyone?
I see no hands on Zoom, no hands in the room.
I see a chat.
The chat was Justin providing some information to staff.
All right. Because I cannot follow chat. Anyway, I don't have Zoom up here. All right, apparently we don't have any public input. I'll let anyone who's watching know that we do have a couple of requests for continuations of hearings without taking, a couple of the hearings without taking testimony that'll come up at 7:30. I guess we'll do those when we get there. Yeah, that's the 124 Westboro Road permit and the 7 Main Street permit. I think those are the only ones so far. Subdivision, common area, and approach maintenance. We got a message from a town administrator about this. Natalia, maybe you should explain.
I'm happy to jump in, Bob, actually, because I had worked.
What did I say?
Natalia.
It's been one of those days.
I get it.
Please
get it.
Please
Same
proceed, Fiona.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to, let me share my screen quickly. I wanted to just bring this back to the board's attention because we talked about it a little bit at our last meeting. And it is kind of a significant policy shift. And I just want the board to have the opportunity to continue to talk through concerns with this new policy and also give the public an opportunity to weigh in on their thoughts. I mean, I think overall, as I mentioned the last meeting, the installation of this policy through the town administrator's office is the point is that we need to try and get a handle on the maintenance needs across town and balancing, what is required with the capacity of the town. So essentially, the policy is that beyond basic landscape maintenance, the town will not be able to take on any additional responsibility. So just something that we'll need to bear in mind going forward, as we're writing permits and conditioning them accordingly. And, trying to figure out as a board, you're all trying to figure out as a board, not me, but how to kind of incorporate this in a way that makes sense and is most comfortable for you. And this has also been circulated to, the select board, of course, as well as the ZBA. So happy to answer any questions and maybe talk through some concerns that the board may have. I know that, again, we talked about it last time, but we didn't get too into the weeds, for lack of a better term, that time.
When I saw this, my first question was, or a thought and question involved, all town rights of way ought to be maintained under one consistent policy. Not just, not try to have some division between doing something about new subdivisions coming along or something like that. We should understand and have a consistent policy. And I'm interested to see, or maybe track down a document where the town is on that subject in general. Dave and I see a brush cutter maybe once a year. Maybe the street gets swept in the spring sometimes. And that's about it in terms of maintenance of our 2 mile road, which has been around. They don't know it's not there. It's been there for 200 or 300 years. On major roads, we also run into where the state fits into the picture, I suppose. But I'd like us to start by understanding what that policy is and how, maybe it's our job to let new subdivision developers know what the town policy is in connection with their development. But I'm not sure I see us. I'm not sure I see what different we can do that really makes sense.
Yeah, the only thing I can see on the part of the board is to review the subdivision rules and regulations, possibly change them to the extent that that might be appropriate to align with whatever the town's policy is. And that may be something pretty abstract in terms of I don't see us writing any policy into the subdivision rules that in any way supersedes or conflicts with or limits the flexibility of the town to have a policy about that. So I'm not sure off the top of my head. I haven't taken the time to read through the subdivision rules to see whether there is an opportunity to amend the subdivision rules to be consistent with whatever the town's policy is. And again, I would say I would not want to write policy into the subdivision rules, but rather have the subdivision rules refer to the town's policy, if necessary, to refer to DPW for approval of anything in that the developer proposes in the subdivision that might go outside the town's policy. I don't know exactly, I haven't tried to think this through, but I don't see a lot that we as a board need to do with respect to this other than to provide any helpful guidance to subdivision developers for the purpose of being consistent with the town's policies.
Yeah, I suppose it's subdivision developers and the people they sell out, the people they sell to. I there's an awful lot in the subdivision rules, of course, as you well know.
Yes.
But I don't think that we speak to this particularly in the rules. I think it's always been, all right, new roads are coming to town, the planning board, manages the development of the subdivision, and then it's another town location. And no one thinks about whether anybody has a greater or lesser claim on the town for service. I wanna, that seems like the right thing. Somewhere along the way, letting people know, letting people be aware that's, a question, a situation that, they might wanna be aware of.
Yeah, the subdivision rules don't say a whole lot about the details of what goes into the management of various areas of the rights of way that the subdivision creates.
Yeah.
Justin has his hand up.
Justin?
So I think I kind of agree with both of you in that is that we should make sure that our subdivision rules, allow the developers to develop in accordance with what the town policy is. That said, I also don't necessarily want to limit a subdivision to only what the town can support, because there could be subdivisions that say we want to give this road to an HOA's, ownership, and we want it to look nicer for whatever reason. And, the town won't be able to handle it, but, that's what we want to do. And I don't necessarily think that that's something we need to, mandate that the developer can't do, but we should find a way to make it explicit that, the town's policy may not align with what you want to do. So if it goes to town meeting, that could be a, reason the town could say no, or, for road acceptance until you, fix that aspect to align with town policies or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how we put that at the moment, but that's, the thought I'm having.
Yeah, I think at least one of the things that led to the creation of this particular memo was the approval of a subdivision with a fence that the town really didn't buy into. And I guess ultimately it wasn't clear who was responsible for what. And that's kind of the lines along which I'm thinking of the subdivision rules. Yeah, you can do anything you want, but understand the town will take responsibility for this much of it. If you want to do something that's beyond the scope of what the town commits to maintain, then you have to arrange, typically through an HOA, for any out of the ordinary maintenance requirements. We're not going to dictate anything, but I think I'm thinking just making it clear what the town will take responsibility for. And again, not writing all of that directly into the subdivision rules, but more referring to the town, because that way the town can have a town-wide policy, and we're not going to try to write special policies into the subdivision rules.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. And I do want to just underscore that I think the communicating this early in the hearing process for projects will be beneficial, as well as, obviously we can look at the subdivision rules and regs, but I think that's the biggest thing is being transparent with folks who are coming forward with applications and just saying, hey, capacity is limited. We can do X. Anything beyond, preparations are going to have to be made to establish a HOA and that subsequent paperwork to do anything beyond what is what the town can handle. But Prabhu, I saw your hand up too. Sorry, I didn't cut in front of you.
Oh, no worries. My thought is that we need to be. I don't know which department or division, or is it our planning board who would need to do that. It's saying bits and pieces of what most of you have said, but my thought is we need to have clarity. We need to provide clarity as to what is that the town would continue owning from a maintenance part. Right. Every time we build assets, there's a cost to the town towards maintenance. Maybe many of us are from the IT community. We have an A list and B list. Some assets are certain things which are mandatory and we'll maintain it, and that is built in as part of the cost of ownership. But there are others which are not necessarily must-haves. They're probably good to haves or nice to haves. Those are things maybe clearly identify that. I'm not sure, Dave, when you said, or you or whoever said that we should not be mandating. My sense is we should be mandating, right? When I say mandating, as to here is the only set of things that the town will take care of on a go-forward basis for maintenance. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I think,
I-
right, I think we're mostly saying that the town will have a policy on what it will do, and need to make sure that everybody understands what that is.
Yeah, I don't think that we should be saying what the town will do. I think we should be saying it goes to the town to determine and maybe modify from time to time what they will do. The real problem is that we are interacting with developers, often two or three layers or generations of developers between the beginning and the end of the process. But the problems that I've seen come from the people who buy from the developers. And we don't really, if they want to make promises or representations to the sellers, to the buyers, that's out of our control. We can be, I think in our rules, we should just say, refer to whatever you should refer to find out what town policy on maintenance is.
Right, absolutely, Bob. I totally agree. I mean, yeah, there's obviously, there's instances where constituents will reach out about something that is, not in the right of way and beyond the scope of this board, for sure. And, there's nothing that we can do about that. That will inevitably happen. But yeah, I mean, I think even just as you mentioned, and as Dave mentioned, just a reference to this policy at some point early on in the process. I think it could be as simple as that. Something in the subdivision regs that say, because Dave is right. There's not a lot of information about landscaping in the regs.
That'll be referring them to that policy will be after the policy is documented by someone and findable by people, because I'm pretty sure it's not in a public, solid place. And I think maybe more of this discussion, if it's needed, maybe we need to have the town administrator talk with us about it. Is that enough discussion? Anybody else?
One thing I'll just add briefly, Bob, is that I think my idea in the we may not want to require the town standards for all subdivisions is just because many times when a subdivision has been built, they may envision it, maybe they expect it to be an HOA, or maybe they expect it to not be, and they hope the town to take ownership of the road. But it's a matter of, they'll be building it, and then it's several years down the road, to use a pun, that they'll decide that they want the town to take ownership of it. So, I don't know that we should require it. I'm not necessarily opposed to requiring the town standards, but I also look at it that
we're not requiring town standards. The town sets standards and follows them to whatever degree it chooses to.
Yep.
We're not. Who would we put a responsibility for following town standards on? The only people we're talking with are the developers.
Yep. Yeah, I'm more meaning if we are referencing telling in their subdivision rules to reference the town, policies or standards, whatever for the roads, then the developer has to meet those when they're building their internal subdivision road. I don't know that we want to require that, just because it could be several layers later that it's decided they want the town to adopt the road. But I'm not necessarily opposed to that either.
I'm afraid I'm not getting good focus here. I think right now, our subdivision rules, or that's probably the place that we communicate with developers, is to say, after acceptance, the town will maintain these roads according to its policies, or something to that degree, and just give that notice Because acceptance isn't even our business, it's the selectmen's business and the town meeting.
Right, we have a role in that, but that's, we're not the
No,
decision.
no, we say the roads are finished.
Right.
You know, the subdivision is finished.
That's our
The
role.
selectmen lay out and declare, or some such, and then town meeting accepts. And that's, you know, we don't, it's not ours. Okay, anybody else have anything they? Okay, I don't see it. All right, policies and procedures, planning board decisions. Oh, yeah. Fiona,
Yes, sure. So,
got that right.
thanks, Mr. Chair. So this was just, this is something that, planning department has noticed has been happening, and I'm sure the board has noticed as well, where we've gotten a good amount of folks who are still navigating the public hearing process, still receiving testimony. Exhibits are being actively updated, but they're also, there might be a situation where there's a lot of different reasons that have been presented, but they would like a decision drafted early. And there's instances where that is warranted. And if, a hardship is demonstrated that is suitable, that, of course, that makes sense. And obviously with some of the recent telecom applications, there's a deadline. It's very specific. It's a federal standard we need to follow. But this was something that I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board going forward. It's been challenging to it's a challenging thing to manage, especially with, it's just Natalia and myself, but also when things are still being updated and it's so in flux. I find that personally and professionally, the cleanest strategy is hearing process closed, decision from there, unless circumstances are significantly warranting something different. So this was really just something that I wanted to float by the board, have a discussion about, and obviously whatever the board decides that they would like to do, and that is what I will do. But it's been cumbersome, I guess. And then it becomes a situation where there's been times that that the decision is being kind of updated quickly, and then the board doesn't really have the time to go through each individual. I know that in the past that's happened where, sometimes the board will go through each individual finding and then make a particular vote, or that hasn't had to happen too much because we haven't had overly challenging decisions, but it's just from a timeline perspective, it can get a little wonky. And also, the standard, as my understanding was that the typical practice was always wait for the hearing to be closed. And I think if we should just we should just revisit this, and happy to talk through this with the board, but I don't want to ramble on too much. It was really just to have a discussion.
I'm often uncomfortable a bit with this for those reasons. As I think through, we're getting more and more. When this started, it was just in a case where it was clear, everything was all set, except they still had to turn in something so that it would be in before the hearing closed. It would be able to be on the record, but otherwise we were all set. All right, that reasonable, and not terribly problematic, except then it leads us to more and more having things still open and pending. That's why I usually, when I'm dealing with this, I look over at our planner and say, if you're comfortable with it and can do it, and I think we should be very, very aware about that, and not not offer up where there are going to be any questions about how to write it. Certainly, if there's gonna be any question about disapproval or.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's no question it's gonna be approved.
Yeah, I think, to be mindful of our limited staff resources, I don't think in general we should ever want to put staff in a position of having to draft a decision that is then going to have to be further modified. I think I'm comfortable with, if everything is, ideally, and this has been our practice more often than not over the years, we close the hearing and then start drafting the decision. Bob just mentioned a sort of kind of what's become maybe a little bit more common of a case, but we've done this off and on over the years too, is we're all set, we pretty much know exactly what the decision is going to be, but we hold the hearing open to receive some additional documentation, which otherwise we would put into a condition of the decision saying it's conditioned upon receiving that document. It's a little bit cleaner to leave the hearing open to receive the document with it. That kind of thing, which is, writing the decision is going to be the same amount of effort, no matter what the timing is. No problem. It's when we attempt to start drafting it, or someone would like to see a decision, at least start to be drafted, before we really know what all is going to go into it. That's a situation that I think we should strive to avoid.
Okay. I think enough said for now.
Yeah.
We'll come to this the next time the question comes up, but I think Fiona can tell people asking her for it, that, well, what we've talked about, and
Yeah.
that they need to talk to us, not her.
Yeah, but I think I'll just briefly mention that in my time on the board, some 13 years now, I think that I'm remembering maybe one or two cases where staff began work on a decision and was able to draft, where there were still some things up in the air, but staff drafted part of the decision. Maybe got some things down that we then had to work on at another meeting. But those are really exceptional cases, and we don't want to make a habit of that at all. I think we've already pretty much expressed. I think, unless somebody else on the board has a different opinion, I think we're pretty clear on it.
Okay? Good enough, Fiona?
Okay. Yes, good enough for me. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time and attention to this and having this discussion. And yeah, well, I think I know how to proceed. So thank you.
Good. Fortunately, that brings us exactly to the beginning of public hearing time, 7:30. I think we can maybe help somebody by touching on the hearings that are being asked to be continued without taking testimony tonight. The first one of them is 7 Main Street, SP 2023-10/SPA.
And here, I'll move that the board grant the applicants a written request to continue this hearing to November 27th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call. Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Am I muted?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries. So, 7 Main Street will be continued until our next meeting. All right, now, special permit SP 2023-06/SPA, 124 Westboro Road.
Move that the board grant the applicants a written request to continue this hearing to Monday, November 27th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
That brings us to special permit 2023-ZZ,
Mr. Chair.
SPA.
Fine.
That's what it says on my paper. 20 Indian Path, Dish Wireless. This is a new hearing, right? So we have a
This
notice.
is a new hearing.
Mr. Chair, I am going to recuse myself from this hearing and this discussion, so I'll come back when this one is done.
Okay, now, I assume we have the applicants, or representatives, of the applicants, here. I want you to realize that at the moment, that leaves us with just 4 members who will be able to vote on this if we take any testimony tonight. There is an associate who's applied for the associate position, and I think action on that with the selectmen is being scheduled for sometime soon. So
Yes, that's good.
they're aware of that.
Yes, yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure where.
And I believe the applicant is on, or was, Ursilia is,
Yes,
should be
that
here.
is correct. That's for special permit 2023-13/SPA.
Well, on
20
my
Indian
piece of
Path.
paper, it says 2023-ZZ. I don't know that that's the right designation. What do you have on the notice? 13. It's the one at 20 Indian Path.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, the legal notice doesn't have that particular designation on it.
All right. I don't know whether it needs to, but it doesn't.
Right, it doesn't need to.
All right. Well, okay.
So
I guess we go.
we'll open with the reading of the legal notice. Pursuant to sections 1.5.7, 1.3.3, and 5.8 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 13th, 2023, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider the application for a special permit request to co-locate on an existing wireless telecommunications facility, cell tower, and install associated equipment on property located at 20 Indian Path, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 38, Lot 16. Said property is located in a medium density residential R20 zoning district. Dish Wireless, care of Darrell Gresham, agent, is the applicant. Scott Matthew Smith and Cheryl Ann Smith are the owners. Copies of the plan are available for public inspection at the Planning Department during normal business hours or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department/Development Projects webpage.
Okay. Fiona, do you want to tell us anything to start?
Sure, absolutely. So, this application was submitted on October 18th. The applicant is proposing something similar to what we've been seeing lately, a co-location of 3 antennas for Dish Wireless on an existing 90-foot monopole. And associated ground equipment within the existing 35 square foot leased compound space. So when we analyze, we did an analysis of the application. Obviously, there we were comparing the requirements in our zoning to what was submitted, and this is looking like it is an eligible facilities request. We'll have Mr. Maxon, when appropriate, weigh in on that, but it's something that the board should bear in mind. The application itself did not state that, but it does, based on the federal regulations, seems to comply with that. The application is, the site is 9.32 acres in an R20 zone. The noting analysis that I conducted did not need to overlap with the Section 7 or Section 6 of the bylaw, which is the water supply protection overlay district or any floodplain regulations. There are several special permits already on this piece of property. That one of the most recent ones was a co-location as well. But I think in total there was 18 special permits or modifications in the planning department's file. So just something for the board to be aware of, but nothing absurd about that at all or unique. I did want to point out there were a couple of items that I'll have the applicant speak to. Most of the waiver request within the application appears to ask for waivers for some of the requirements, just in the justification is that a waiver is requested, but no other reasoning beyond that, which is something that we do typically ask for, understanding that this is just a co-location and you're not changing anything. We do understand that the changes will be minimal, but that is something I wanted to highlight. Something else that I wanted to bring to the attention of the board and let the applicant speak to is elaboration on any signage. I believe that that's not going to be involved. We would like to know if there has been any communication with the fire or police department about sharing space for public safety reasons. And I noted that the antenna size appears to be 6 feet in height on the sheet A6 of the submitted site plan, which is a foot higher than what our regs allow. So just wanted to bring that to your attention and have that discussion. So I know that just threw a lot at you, Ursilia, but happy to answer any questions that you have and hear your explanation of the project as well.
Is that a change in fence height from what's there?
It's not the fence height, Mr. Chair. It's the antenna height. It's on the sheet. It's 6 feet compared to 5, which is in our regs. And I believe that this issue has come up in past applications, and it was flagged as a non-issue, but it's just something that I have noticed and wanted to bring to the attention of the board.
Yeah, on that particular topic, Mr. Maxon has pointed out to us in more than one occasion in the past that particular figure, the 5-foot figure in our zoning bylaw, is rather outdated, that it's much more common. In fact, I think in one of Mr. Maxon's peer review comments on another project, he pointed out that modern antennas are typically 6 to 8 feet high, and it had been suggested that that's one of the details in our zoning bylaw that needs to be updated. So we've been basically ignoring the 5-foot limit because it is no longer appropriate.
And it may not be, how effective it can or should be under eligible facility applications is even a
Yes.
more than a new application that doesn't fall into that category. I noticed that our record doesn't have a report from Mr. Maxim on this, which is too bad.
Yes.
I see he's online, or I think I saw him a little bit ago online. And after we give the applicant an opportunity to tell us about this, maybe we'll see what input he might have, one way or the other.
Mr. Chair, before we hand it over to the applicant to speak, I just want to make a note that the payment hadn't been processed for Mr. Maxon to do his peer review yet. Natalia, I believe, said that payment may have been received within the past few hours. I'll have her confirm that, but that is the reason why we haven't been able to get our peer review. And we will need Mr. Maxon's expertise to review the structural analysis report and the other materials that have been submitted. But I see Natalia's hand is up.
Like the questions about how it fits with eligible facilities, for example. So the money for that is one of the submission requirements. So the submission wasn't complete until
I
today.
think Natalia will be able to
Yeah, Natalia?
weigh in
Okay,
on
so
that.
up to this point, we have always left peer review as a separate item because we never know what the estimate may be. Mr. Maxon has lately told us that most of these types of co-locations will be a flat fee of $4,000, but at the time we did not know that. So we handled it as we usually do, which means we get the estimate for peer review, and once we receive the check, we then tell the peer review engineer that he may proceed. We received the check today. I did notify Mr. Maxon, but as you know, that was today, so he didn't have a chance to write a report.
In the case, we gotta look at how this works, I think, particularly in the case of eligible facilities type applications, because there's such a short timeline on them.
If I can speak again.
Sure.
So we do know now, as Mr. Maxon just recently told us, that he will be doing a flat fee. So in the future, that won't be a problem. We will already know that it'll be the fee will be $4,000 for these types of applications.
Is that for everything, or is that for
Co-locations.
eligible facility type?
Yes, the eligible facility co-location type of
Okay,
application.
right. Okay, well, that's ground's covered, but we'll see if he can help us at all, or if we have to wait till next week, and 2 weeks, whenever. All right. So Fiona, is this now time to talk to the applicant?
Yeah,
Are
yes,
you,
I think it would be a good time to give them a chance to speak to, the materials, and then we can do strategize from there how we want to proceed.
Okay, who do we have?
My name is Arcelia Davis, and I am an agent for Dish Wireless. I just want to say that this is a co-location on an existing tower. The tower will not be extended. The ground space will not be extended or expanded. They'll be adding 3 antennas to the 56-foot height on a 95-foot tower. It's, it's going to be 3 antennas with appurtenances, and everything will be contained in that area, the leased area that we have. Do you have any questions for me?
Actually, oh, no, okay. 3 antennas.
Yes. One
Right.
per sector.
That's been coming up. What do you count as an antenna? And each of the 3 is an antenna in this case.
Yes.
For us electrical engineers. Okay. Is there more that you want to tell us before we see who else has anything?
Well, do you have any questions for me as far as what you would like to know? It's,
Any board members?
it's a co-location.
Board members?
No.
No?
Nothing from me at the moment, anyway.
Anybody else? Any other members? Apparently not.
Mr. Chair, there is a hand raised on Zoom.
Yeah, I don't drive Zoom. I'm not even qualified to think about it. I don't see the hand,
Yes, there is a hand.
because you are qualified to drive it. And who might that be?
The hand raised is identified as Rich Whitney.
Let
So Fiona has, I didn't sign in with the authority to enable Rich to speak, so.
Okay. So Fiona has that power?
Rich,
Yes,
talking is, Rich has been enabled to talk, so.
Go
he
ahead,
should be
Richard.
allowed now.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
guess.
Okay, first question I have is they applied in their application with Crown Castle's engineering of 2021. Here we are, 223. And is that engineering results, are they just using that? Or do they have their own engineer that went out and looked at the tower and the tower can accept this extra weight? And has the tower has been extended? Has there been any new certifications for the tower that this can handle?
Well, we did submit a structural. Since 2021, I don't believe any other co-location has taken place at this location.
That's a new look at the tower that you submitted?
The structural,
Yes.
yes, the structural
You're still
is the most
submitting,
recent.
what I see on my screen, I see a December 21st, 2021 date.
Yes, that is correct.
So that wasn't relative to the addition of these antennas. These antennas would be in addition to everything that was being considered in that report. Is that true?
Yes, we have, in that report would be the antennas that are existing and the antennas that are proposed.
No, I didn't see that.
At this, no, it's not. The 2021 report is, I can't imagine that it is anticipating what you're asking for now to be added.
I actually initially submitted my application for permitting in early 2022
For these antennas?
for these antennas,
These
yes.
new
And then
ones.
it was placed on hold, and we reactivated again in this past spring. I think it was in April or May
So
of
this,
this year. So nothing's changed since the 2021
so you're
structural.
you're assuring us that the structural report that we have in this record
Is the most
does
current.
include the antennas you're asking for now.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just looking at it on my screen. It's got a proposed equipment configuration at the 56-foot elevation. That's the new project here.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else, Rich?
Yeah, I want to know is this what's the G number on this? And how many panels are you going to add, and what's their size and measurements?
Okay. I'm not sure what you mean by G.
Well, is it a G3, G5 system?
They're actually 72-inch antennas by 20-inch.
No.
They're pretty standard antennas. They're panel antennas.
I think he's talking about, like, my phone is speaking 5G right now.
Right.
Yes, these will be 5G antennas.
And you're putting 3 of these on?
3 of them, yes, that is correct. If you go to this page, right here, you could see them on the 56-foot location.
So how many how many antennas are going to be on this single pole when you add these three total?
I don't have that information, but we are adding 3 antennas, and we do have a structural that allows us to be able to add it to this
Well,
existing pole.
I understand that, but I'm worrying about the microwaves that are coming off it that causes cancer, and how in California that they have blocked so many numbers of antennas now against public buildings and to neighborhoods. And we went through this, what was it, 4 years ago or 5 years ago with this same pole. And Crown Castle wanted to move it and it got shot down. So I'm wondering where I am living in the neighborhood right where this pole is.
Mhm.
I'm worrying about more cancer coming my way than anything else. And I hope you, because I saw that you had somebody just sign over the top of the stamp of the old engineering plans, and it's nothing up to date that I could see. That's the only thing I'm worrying about. Is it going to fall over? And with adding 3 more panels, which would be a total of 15 of waves put out, are we going to be worrying about more cancer in this neighborhood? Because we've already had 4 people in the neighborhood that had cancer.
Well, I can't speak to radio frequency, but we did provide an RF compliance report to Natalia. It was submitted.
Yeah, I
So
read that.
that will have all the information, I believe, that you're looking for as far as radio frequency.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea. That's my idea, my say so, of adding more onto it or putting another tower there. That's, as a neighbor of this project, that's all I got to say, guys. And I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, and other members for allowing me to speak.
Yeah. Maybe when Mr. Maxim is able to take on this particular application, he may explain better. But on the RF exposure, going back, I go back to all of our cell towers, and we've been advised over the years that we're not allowed at our level of this to consider RF questions. That's the federal government's domain to regulate. So that's probably part of the answer. But we have reports and so on, of course, here, as were discussed. Thanks for your input, Richard. Is there anybody else who has anything to put in at this point?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a note that I don't have that much expertise, but, or Celia, maybe you can answer this, that the structural analysis that you submitted, is that used interchangeably with an RF report, or is the RF report something different that you submitted?
The RF report is something different.
Okay.
The analysis that you have in front of you actually tells you what is on the pole, and if it would be okay for us to add the additional weight.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you go down, I think it's, if you scroll down, they should have a conclusion.
I think I'm in the appendix now.
Yeah, I think it's further up.
Okay.
Where the engineer is actually.
Intro, analysis, criteria, assumptions, results. And then it's the appendix.
Yeah, if you go further up. it'll tell you the proposed equipment configuration is sufficient capacity.
You're talking about structural capacity.
Structural capacity, yes, that's correct.
But you referred to an RF report.
Yes, we did. We submitted an RF report, or RF compliance report.
And I'm looking, trying to,
If you like, I can email you a copy of it.
well, it better be in our record.
Yeah, it was provided to Natalia.
So, Celia, if you send that to me, I mean, everything is going to have to be peer reviewed by our wireless consultant anyway. So we can't, you know, the board will obviously be the final determining factor, but we do have a peer review process that we need to follow that we can't do tonight, obviously.
Okay.
So, and he will need to double check the radio frequency analysis and this, make sure the emissions are in compliance.
Right. If you have any, yeah, if you're missing it or if you need an additional copy, you know, feel free to email me. I think Natalia has my email address and I will send it to you. That's not a problem.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, David Maxon here.
Hi, I was just about to,
Okay. Go ahead.
yeah, I don't know how much you're able to provide yet on this, given what we were discussing earlier about bringing you on. If you have anything, though, feel free.
Well, great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
It's okay with us.
Good.
It's a question of whether it's okay
That's
with you. You
No,
know, the
I
check's in the
just,
mail.
I admit I'm in my car. I got delayed in Lakeville, so I wasn't able to attend in person. Since I just got to work today that the funds had come in, I have not put my nose to the grindstone on the application. But I did look at it when I was first asked about reviewing it. And so a couple of things to note. First, let me just touch on structural. Tower companies are now pretty militant about having their tenants do a thorough structural review before allowing them to add things to a tower. So I expect that when I review the structural report, I will see all the antennas that exist, the antennas and the radio heads and the cables that are proposed. And as the applicant's agent was pointing out, that there will be a statement probably at the end of that document or somewhere where the structural engineer gives it a green light. So I'll double check that and verify that for you. It's great that there is an RF client compliance report on the record. I will look at that. Just by way of explanation, I know many of you have heard this multiple times. The situation is indeed one where if the applicant is installing a facility with other facilities at the same location, that all of those facilities together must comply with the FCC safety limits. And the Telecommunications Act of 1996 says that as a board, you can't regulate the placement of that facility beyond verifying, with respect to emissions, beyond verifying that they will be compliant with the federal standards. So we'll check that report and report back if we have any questions about it. Now, the question of an eligible facilities request comes up. I did not see any reference to an eligible facilities request in the application. Therefore, no shot clock, no 60-day shot clock was started in the application. Therefore, if the applicant should decide later on that this is an eligible facilities request, I would suggest that with advice of counsel, you require the applicant to refile. Because it would be unfair to suddenly turn this application into an eligible facilities request midstream, unless I missed something and there is something in the application that does refer to this being an eligible facilities request. I'm going to go on the assumption that it's not. So you have your 90-day clock for co-location. the old-fashioned way, using an existing structure, and I don't think it'll be a rush. There isn't going to be that much to ask in the next hearing or between hearings to provide for the next hearing. So overall, the application is, as you've noted, something that's very similar to the application at 43 Estabrook Avenue, where Dish is attaching to a tower owned by a tower company, and they're not doing much at all to increase the emissions or increase the visual impact or traffic or any of those other things. And probably the primary interest is structural. I would note that structural compliance is in the jurisdiction of the building commissioner. It's certainly helpful to have information in the zoning record that shows that the applicant knows what they're doing and that they will be able to provide appropriate structural analysis to the building inspector. But if there are any changes to the tower, for instance, perhaps a wireless tenant upgraded their antennas, not Dish, but someone else upgraded their antennas to 5G or something between 2021 and today, that's a question that I would put out to the tower company through the applicant to make sure that's correct. And if it's not correct, it's still something that can be corrected and does not necessarily need to hold up this permitting process. It just needs to be squared away by the time an application is filed with the building commissioner. And that, top of mind, that's what comes to mind so far on the application. I'll do a report for it.
Yeah, the structural reminds me, I seem to remember that back when this tower originally went in, there were questions, maybe even a little bit of a waiver on the fall zone within the property, and I don't see anything to help me, haven't found it yet anyway, anything to help me remember what might be within the actual height of the tower that a failure could come down onto, because so when we get into the structural, that's sort of the ultimate question, isn't it? Is it going to fall on something that hurts somebody? If we can get the structural report properly, then that's not an issue. But be interesting to think about that. Do we have anything else tonight?
Rich Whitney has his hand up again.
Richard.
Yeah, I have one more question. Listening to the gentleman speaking, saying that you have a 90-day window of doing this permit, and since they, as she stated, that they did this in 2001 now, and then they pulled it back, but they didn't, did they send a letter into Natalia or to the planning board that they were withdrawing and then starting all over? So would this be a brand new application?
I think they withdrew back then. They must have.
Yeah,
This is David.
I originally.
Natalia?
The application has a stamp on it, and that's the date that counts.
Right. They may have planned to submit it at one point or something, but we never received any application. I believe in the past they were asking questions, but no application was received. This is the application, the only application that we have for this.
Okay. and that engineering report from 2001 needs to be updated.
Yeah, but we've asked for that. I think we're looking to get that.
Yeah,
All right, thank you, gentlemen, again, and I appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah, I thought I heard us, we're talking about the engineering report that's dated December of 2021, not 2001. And the applicant has said that they did some of the engineering work for this around that time, that they were planning on filing in early 2022, but they did not file. So this is, the engineering work is presumably, I mean, I guess that's, the question is to make sure that what the engineering report is up to date. But
Yeah. The engineering report needs to be for what is being proposed.
Yeah.
Your engineers can look at it before you submit.
yes, and what I saw in the engineering report is it does appear to be for what is proposed.
Yeah. I think that we'll get that dealt with for a continuation of the, continuation session of this.
Yep.
Anything else?
I have one comment. I originally sent an eligible facilities letter with my initial submission back in 2022.
But that's a different application from what, this is a new
It was
application.
for it was for the building department, yes, before I knew that we had to go through the special permit.
Right, so that, I think we need in our, if you had wanted us to treat this under that, you'd have had to submit to us. I don't think I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be an issue, but, David had suggested, that at this point, it's too late to come with that on this application, because it wouldn't be fair, on the shot clock business.
Yeah, and I think as a practical matter, Mr. Maxon at least hinted that processing this as an eligible facility request offers no particular advantage.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of this particular request. If it was, something very different from what we're looking at, that might make a difference, but in this case, it probably doesn't. And Fiona's hand is up again.
Yes, Fiona.
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore the point that we did not receive any materials to the planning department this time around indicating anything about this being an eligible facilities request.
Right.
So
Yep.
Bob, the chair is correct in that we need to.
I think we've got the base pretty well covered. In fact, are there any more bases out there that we haven't covered yet?
I do have one quick question, yes. Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you to ask Mr. Maxon,
sure.
Just so I'm clear on something.
Sure.
I just want to, I guess, get clarity, and if this is an inappropriate question to ask because he hasn't had a chance to review, then that's fine. But if we need to issue some sort of letter to the applicant about the completeness of the application, similar to what we've done for requests of this nature in the past, it seems like the time we're not held to that time standard at this time. So I'm assuming that that's not the case, but I just want to confirm.
This is David. I think you're on the right track. This would be something you could certainly ask counsel about, but in my experience, the FCC rules about eligible facilities requests include the opportunity to pause the shot clock after determining an application is incomplete. But I'm not aware of any similar language for a conventional co-location application and the 90-day shot clock. So I don't think application completeness is so much of an issue. But as I say, that's something that council would have more detail on if you want to check on that.
Yeah, well, you'll be talking to Fiona. You'll be talking to council about various things fairly soon, and any chance to cover the base to whatever degree you need will be good. Is there anything else? If not, perhaps the applicant would like to ask for this hearing to be continued, maybe until our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Yes, I would like that.
You are requesting that? We'll have
Yes,
to.
I am requesting that.
She said she is requesting that.
Okay.
Yes.
And Fiona will, or Natalia will make sure that we get a written copy of that for our record.
Yep, I will move that the board grant the applicant's request to be received in writing as soon as practicable to continue this hearing to Monday, November 27th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood. Oh, Mr. Wood is not participating. Mr. Venkatraman.
Yes.
Mr. Hassinger.
Yes.
And Mr. Robbins votes yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll see you on
Thank
this.
you.
We'll see you on this one next time. Now,
Thank you.
thank you. Now, I think that brings us to another request for special permit, SP 2023-11/SPA 43 Estabrook Avenue, Dish Wireless LLC.
Is this still part of my work?
That's between you and the, this is another cell tower hearing. And it's from the same folks, and they need, I'm pretty sure they need a stenographic record, but I'm not, make sure they're paying you, not me. Let's see, Justin, do you have the notice for this one?
This is a continuation, and Natalia has her hand up.
Oh, you're right. I was thinking this was new too. That's right. Okay, at the Knowlton Farm.
Natalia has her hand up.
Yes, Natalia.
Yeah, you're right. It is a continuation, but back to, I think I was, did somebody ask whether the stenographer was staying?
Yes, I did. The stenographer did.
I can't hear.
Yeah, the stenographer was asking whether she should stay.
Yes, there's 3 public hearings and we have contracted for all 3.
Yeah. Okay. So we're reopening the continuation, or opening the continuation of this hearing. Anything on this for us, Fiona?
So yes, I have drafted a draft decision which Mr. Maxon was able to review and provide comment, just due to this being an eligible facilities request and that clock, us being on that timeline for that the shot clock. We wanted to, out of an abundance of caution, make sure that everything was prepared ahead of time and ready to go for this hearing. When we spoke with council, this was the strategy that made that was made the most sense and protected the board and the town accordingly. So there is, since the last discussion of this hearing, there has been a submission from the fire department, a comment about any extra space being utilized for public safety purposes. That draft condition is included in the draft decision. We also received a compliance report on October 20th that was in response to the last hearing process. And that seems to check out without any issue. So I will share my screen with the board and pull up the project page and the draft decision, and we can go through. I think probably, Mr. Chair, let me know if you agree the best use of the time is to go through that. And make any necessary edits.
Lead us to what we need to do.
Sure. So most of the language is pretty standard, the typical background, exhibit information. One thing to note is that Domenica from Crown Castle did provide some updates to the addresses, and I incorporated her feedback into this current version. So nothing significant. It was just the incorrect address for G, K, H, and I. The findings, a lot of these are the standard findings, referencing the ZBL sections, the prior special permit reports. But I did want to talk through, there was a comment from Mr. Maxon that is further down the line here. So finding 27. So with regard to section 5.8.4.b, regarding the submission of a site justification or appropriateness statement, including a description of the narrowing process that eliminated other potential sites. Mr. Maxon provided some potential language for eligible facilities requests or decisions. So this is something that the board will need to provide their feedback on.
Now, are we gonna deal with this before we close the hearing?
We might want to close the hearing and then go through the decision, seeing as how we left the hearing open for the purpose of receiving the emissions compliance report, which we have now received. And if there is no further information that we need to receive on this, I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Now we can proceed and with consideration of the draft decision. And we are looking at what? Finding 27?
Yes.
Yes.
And we have what, two different, we have two different suggested sections.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair. So there was possible language for tailored to eligible facilities requests that was suggested by Mr. Maxon, and an alternative solution for typical language seen, in decisions. So I don't know if Mr. Maxon has any comment about, any elaboration, but if not, if the board doesn't have any questions, then we might want to talk through what would be preferred. I don't think that there's a better option. I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're both
Okay.
viable options to
David?
include.
Mr. Maxim?
Alas, can you hear me?
Yes.
Only
Yes.
some.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I'm unable to read the screen where I am at the moment, and but basically, as you can see, I just put in some language that I thought fit the situation, sort of tactically a little bit more appropriately. But I think it's just a matter of reading through it and seeing which resonates with you best.
Which one of the two that we're looking at is the one you recommended? Fiona probably knows.
Yeah, the typical language that the board has used and decisions that have been drafted in the past is the latter, is this paragraph here. That is what's typically been drafted or used. This was something, this was suggested by Mr. Maxon to add or incorporate.
comments, thoughts?
Remind me, did we determine that this is an eligible facilities request? Just to be clear on, given that my preference on these two wordings is the one that Mr. Maxon suggested, because I think that is a very clear language for that, at least in my opinion. But I don't feel strongly. It's just what I
So you're saying
mean.
the first one?
The first one, yes, sir.
Yes. Anybody else have thoughts?
I think I slightly prefer that first one as well. I think that sort of this is reflects one of the issues that's come up before with better aligning the zoning bylaw with the concept of an eligible facilities request, because in general, as an eligible facilities request, you probably don't need the alternatives analysis that is referred to here. So, yeah, go with the EFL version unless anybody feels otherwise.
Does anybody else feel otherwise? Okay, let's make the decision that we're going to vote on include the first choice in that case, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And the other one, Fiona, is that on finding 44?
Yes, I'm just scrolling there now. Yes, so this is similar to what came up earlier. I am going to have Mr. Maxon elaborate on this. This seems to be what is going on in the telecom world, and as we have discussed at this hearing and the prior hearing, our zoning bylaws a little outdated. So if this is aligning with current practice and based on what Mr. Maxon is seeing, I have no any issue with it. I think the board should weigh in, obviously, what they would like to see. But I kept this in because we'll need to discuss.
Yeah, if this is an eligible facilities, I'm pretty sure that our outdated law is not going to be in play if an explanation needed to go in here of that, we could, but I don't know. I'm not sure that we need to worry about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember whether in the past, in recent years, whether we've even addressed the antenna height in the decision.
I only remember that coming up here in just the recent going around, maybe since Fiona noticed.
Yeah, because I mean, the 5-foot limit has been in the bylaw for 20-some years.
It was perfectly fine when we wrote it.
Right. So, but in more recent years, say the past 10 years, when antennas have been added or replaced with the antenna height being 6 feet or 8 feet, I don't know. I don't remember, and there's probably no point in going back and looking, but I don't remember whether we, in our decisions, whether we have accounted for the fact that the height technically violates the bylaw, and I think we probably haven't.
I don't think anybody picked up on it. What I'm wondering about only is whether we need to put any words in here, since we've noticed about given the changes that have taken place, and I don't know whether we have the power to waive the bylaw.
We do.
In this case?
I believe the bylaw, section 5.8, specifically authorizes the board to waive some of the requirements.
Well, is this one of them?
Technically it is.
Fine. Let's
So,
put in,
as a technicality, we should vote to waive that 5-foot limit.
let's put that wherever it belongs. Okay,
Yep.
Fiona?
I'll just add, I think we probably want to have in our findings that we are finding this at 6 feet as okay, as in this application. I don't necessarily want to put in the findings that we're going to say, 8 feet or, whatever the industry standard I don't think the findings is the right spot for that. I do think we should probably update the ZBL to align with the, practices and, that stuff. But I think keeping the finding tied to this application is probably the better
Seeing as how we're
course, I
not going
think.
to update the zoning bylaw this evening,
Probably not. Certainly not.
the finding can be that whatever.
It strikes me that we should, where the blue is on finding 44, we take that out, and if we have a place for waivers, put in a waiver of the 5 feet to 6, because that's circumstances of, we find the circumstances in this case necessitate it.
Yep.
Okay?
As simple as we can make it, but cover the bases.
Okay, is that okay, Fiona? Is that enough?
Yeah, I'm just making a note.
Okay,
So just remove, I'm sorry, one more time. So removing the boom and putting in a waiver for the 5 foot requirement.
waiving from 5 to 6
Okay.
in this case.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yep.
Right. It's
Perfect.
a case specific waiver. What's requested is 6 feet. What we allow is 5. So yeah. Don't make it any more complicated than that. Right?
Or broad. Needs
Okay.
needs careful thought to do it right. You don't want to waive more than whatever, or change more than you want. You don't want to put in 15 feet or something, or open it up for. Okay, so with that change understood, is there anything else in this draft decision that we need to address?
I will make that. So obviously the waivers section will need to make that. I will need to make that change. But other than that, there was condition C6 aligns with what we just spoke about. So we have our answer for that. But I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention while we're having this discussion. So we'll go forward with the 6 feet.
6 feet. Yes,
Yep.
I missed that. Okay,
The
understanding
and
all that, is there
that
any,
is it.
is there any more discussion?
My only question / comment
I
on
can't.
the waiver piece
Start
itself,
again,
do we
please.
need to have?
Start it again, please.
Yep. My only kind of question on the waiver piece of doing the 6 feet is, I vaguely remember at past decisions when we write them, if the applicant did not request a waiver, we put some specific language that to the effect of, though the applicant did not request it, we are waiving this requirement for XYZ reasons. I don't know if you need to articulate that in this case, but I just wanted to raise the thought.
We could do that, but I don't see a reason.
Okay.
We don't have to just waive things that we're asked to waive. That I know of. Doesn't seem
Yeah, I
to be
think there was at
anybody
least
who
one or two we
knows.
did it that way, but
But keep it as simple as possible.
works for me.
Anybody else? Everybody on board with what we're doing? Anybody want to make a motion?
How about we move? I'll just make the motion straight up. I move that the board find favorably on all findings where there is a question about, move that the board find favorably, grant the requested waivers, and grant the special permit with the conditions all as drafted with the modifications as discussed at this meeting.
Second.
Moved and second. Discussion.
I have a question. So what you said, favorably or unfavorably? Sorry, Dave.
Favorably.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
roll call.
Mr. Davidson,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously. One down. Good. Thank you all. That brings us to a special permit hearing continuation for special permit 2023-005/SPA at 58 Follett Street. Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless Sutton LLC.
Good evening.
Let's give Fiona the first chance to say anything she wants on this at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So since the last time the board reviewed this application, we needed some more information from the applicant, particularly a revised balloon test. They did get that done. And the test was conducted on Saturday. I believe it was Saturday, October 21st. That information was reviewed by Mr. Maxon, and peer review were provided on November 8th. Site plans have since been revised and submitted, as well as a photo simulation package, which Mr. Maxon also did review. Up to this point, I'm not going to go on too long about this, as the board is well aware of this application and where we're at. But I will say that there's no outstanding comments from Graves Engineering. I think tonight we'll probably focus on we'll focus on Dave Maxon's responses to the submitted materials. There is a couple of other things on the town side that we will need to discuss as well that I've uploaded to the exhibits, particularly the comment from the assessor's office as well as our town council. So happy to answer any preliminary questions, but we might want to have the applicant speak to their updates before we do that.
Okay. Let's do that.
Great, thank you. Michael Jaimo, Robinson and Cole for Verizon Wireless, and I have a couple of our engineering experts here, including a new RF person. Soheil has left C Squared, so Keith Valenti is here, but he's familiar with the project through the background information. He's going to speak tonight. We did a few updates as Fiona just mentioned. One is the design has been tweaked a little bit to have 4 sectors instead of 3 sectors, same number of antennas. They're just pointing a slightly different direction on the west side. There's 2 arrays on the west side, and then this same configuration on the east side, pointing northeast and and southeast. And those are on revised site plan sheets that I don't know if somebody wants to pull those up. They were provided. They do take a long time to load, though, right? There you go. That'll just give you a sense of the arrays now are facing. It's a square mount, and the arrays are facing those directions. The previous design had a triangular array and had 4 antennas on each side. This is three antennas on a side with a square array, and it's just done to maximize the potential for this site to provide coverage where coverage is needed. It doesn't change the part that's facing into Grafton. That's still pointing in the same direction, and Keith can go over that with you. The second piece of this is, I think you might be aware, we had done a balloon test. The balloon was flown at the wrong height, so we didn't follow through on that. We then ran another test, renoticed and ran another test. at the correct heights. So the photo simulations on this one are done for a 155-foot tower with the 150-foot center line, and we've sent you the photo sim package, and there you go. And if you, I don't know if you want to scroll through those or discuss any of the ones in particular. They're you know, there's minimal visibility on most of these locations. That's the one from, where's that? I don't. Let me see if I can follow along. If commentary would be helpful. So that's Daffodil Court, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And that tower is, I guess, above the peak of that middle roof. You can see it barely in the tree line. The next one is Blackstone Street. The next one is another location on Blackstone Street. Neither of those had a visible balloon. Photo 5 is a site on Follette Street. The balloon is not visible. Photo 6 is another one on Blackstone Street where the balloon was not visible. Photo 7 is Fitzpatrick Road where the balloon was not visible. Photo 8 is Depot Street, and the balloon is visible at a distance from that location. Photo 9 is a location along Follette Street at the power lines, and the balloon was not visible from that location. 10 is Fitzpatrick Road, another location on Fitzpatrick Road, not visible from that location. Location along Main Street, not visible from there. Photo 12 is on Boston Road, and it is again visible at a distance from that location. You can barely see that. It's next to the, if you go down to the next screen, it's, oh, I'm sorry, that was the right screen. Yeah.
Sorry.
I was one behind you. There you go. So it's just to the, it's really in the middle, in between those two white buildings to the left. There you go. You just were on it. Right there. Again, tree line level. The next one is Providence Road, not visible from that location. 14, the same. 15, another Fitzpatrick Road, not visible from that location. 16, Alana Drive, not visible from that location. 17 is another Main Street location, not visible from that location. 18 is Pleasant Street, balloon not visible from that location. 19 also not visible from that location. 20 Barbara Jean Street, not visible from that location. Lottie Drive is 21 and not visible from that location. 22 is Blanchard Road, not visible from that location. 23 is Autumn Gate Circle, and it is visible there at a distance of 0.9 miles, and that's sticks up above the tree line in the middle of that view shed. There you go, right there. Yeah. And then 24 is Blanchard Road, and not visible from that location. So the balloon is visible at a distance from a couple of places. It's not visible from most of the closer places, which is what we had thought when we lowered the height by the 15 feet from what was originally proposed, that would make a pretty good difference in terms of visibility, because it would get it below the tree line most locations, and that seems to be exactly what had happened. Those were that was the additional information we submitted, as well as a revised RF coverage report, which I'm going to ask if Keith can present some of that.
Your choice.
Your choice, Keith. Yeah. I'll sit there. I'll move over.
Good evening. Keith Valenti, last name is Vincent Victor, Ellante, with C Squared Systems. Business address is 65 Dartmouth Drive in Auburn, New Hampshire. As Mike introduced, I'm a little late to the party, so I'm trying to fill in as best I can. But I understand most recently there's been we provided an updated RF report reflective of the 4-sector design, which is dated August 23rd, 2023. So I don't want to rehash items that I've already gone over, but I would normally just walk through the coverage maps if that's acceptable to the board, if that makes sense. Okay, so if we could pull up that RF report, thank you. And at the end of the report, there's a set of 5 maps. Those are the coverage maps that I can just quickly run through here, just to give a sense of Verizon's need in the area, where the current existing sites are within their network, what the gap is, and how the proposed site fills in that gap. So looking at attachment A, this is Verizon's existing coverage from their surrounding facilities, including facilities outside the view of the map. This shows just their basic 700 megahertz 4G LTE coverage. Verizon operates in multiple frequency bands. They have higher frequency bands, and they use those to manage the capacity on their network. Those higher bands, just due to the physics, they won't cover quite as well. So this is really your best case presentation in terms of a coverage standpoint. And so to just quickly introduce the sites, the existing sites are the black icons. They're generally shown in sets of 3 wedges to denote the sectors on each facility. But starting at the top, just over the town line in Millbury by Dorothy Pond is a monopole that Verizon's on. Moving to the top right is a site labeled Grafton 4. That's in the church steeple near Grafton Common. In the center of the site is the site in blue. That is the proposed facility at 58 Follett Street. Continuing southwest into Sutton on the south side on 146 is a lattice tower. That's at PT Watts Truck Repair. And then continuing north on Route 146, Verizon has a location there that's labeled Millbury Center, which is behind the R&R gymnastics building. So those are the locations that Verizon is presently on, and the green area of coverage is what's provided from those surrounding facilities. The area that's not shaded or in white, that's deficient areas of service. That's where we're considering our gap in coverage that we're trying to fill as best we can with this proposed facility. And as you can see, that impacts Millbury Street turning into Grafton Street as you head into Millbury, Route 122A and Main Street, along the Blackstone River Valley. It's naturally lower lying in topography, so it's a little more challenging to cover. We also have gaps along 122 running north-south through town, and then certainly the side streets in this area of southwest Grafton. If we can go to attachment B, this shows what the composite coverage is with the proposed facility. We've run the analysis at the adjusted height of 150-foot center line with the 4 sectors of coverage. As you can see, it fills out a broad section of this part of town. The topography is such that that's really what defines what a site will cover and what it won't cover. In this sort of a topography area, you can't always get it all. There's going to be hills and valleys that you can't always get, but we do cover a substantial portion of the targeted objective with this proposed site. We cover along 122A and Main Street. We cover portions of 122 running north-south through town. And then to the north of the site, we cover Millbury Street as well. So it fills out a large portion of the area. Moving on to attachment C. With the wireless networks these days, many folks have multiple devices. They're an indispensable part of our daily lives. So with that comes a heavy amount of usage and network demand on these facilities. So what this shows here is how are these surrounding sites serving Grafton and the surrounding area? Which sites are serving what areas? And that's what we present on this particular map. Is we've color coded the areas served by particular sectors or a single sector on some of these surrounding sites to show, where are they covering. And what we have here is focusing around our proposed site labeled Grafton 5 is we're getting coverage predominantly from sites outside of town that are really kind of extending as far as they can. It's kind of a mishmash of coverage in this area of town. From a network standpoint and a user standpoint, that's not ideal. It means as you're traveling through an area, you're ping-ponging between different sites. This is a low-level signal area, so that effectively creates even more of a burden on these surrounding sites, simply because it's not as clean of a signal. So there's more correction going on, and it's less actual data going to the user. And so that sucks up a lot of the capacity on some of these far off sites that are trying to serve the area. So in addition to the improved coverage and filling in the gaps in coverage that I described earlier, if we go to attachment D, what this shows is in the green area, this is what would be served by these 4 sectors of the proposed site. It kind of cleans up the area, provides a single dominant site or set of sectors to serve the usage in the area, what follows from that is those sites that we're trying to serve in here, they can better serve the usage that are closer to those sites. So it kind of rolls out, and that's why it is a network. Is all the sites kind of function together, and an improvement here has sort of a domino effect in improving the quality and the performance of these surrounding sites. The final map of the report is attachment E. This is helpful to include because it really helps describe, why each site covers where it does and doesn't cover certain other areas. I apologize. I noticed before coming here that the legend was left off the map, but I can tell you that the dark blue areas are at about 300 feet AMSL. Those are going to be the lower, relatively speaking, on this map. The orange and red is about 500 feet AMSL, so that's kind of your span. And you can kind of see Route 122 running north-south. That's along a valley. Main Street and 122A, as I described earlier, that also runs along the Blackstone River Valley. And then in the center of the map, where the proposed site is, it sits atop a nice little knoll in the center of it all. So from that, it has an advantageous location. It's uniquely suited to provide coverage all around it. It's not necessarily blocked in one direction or the other, so it allows to provide quite a substantial footprint of coverage in the area. That's a quick run through of the report and the maps that were included. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Keith, you've had a chance to read David Maxon's report. I don't know if you want to speak to that now or wait for David to present, and then you can respond to him, which is you're more comfortable doing.
Yeah, I can wait. I received the report on Thursday, and I have read it, but I didn't have any detailed comments.
Okay. So those were that was the new stuff which you had asked for, and I know we've got a new report from David Maxon which we would want to respond to in some ways, and then we have some material in the file about Chapter 61, which we're also happy to respond to. So.
Chapter 61. What is?
That's the tax question that the town council has raised.
Yes, okay.
All right.
That's one of my concerns. I don't think of it under those terms. I don't do taxes. I don't do chapter land. Shall I? Is this, Fiona, anything before we?
Yes, so, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know that this question came up previously a few times, and it's been kind of in and out. it's been difficult for us to navigate and get an opinion on how to proceed. We have been in contact. This was brought to our attention. I'll backtrack. Sorry, this was brought to our attention by the Board of Assessors recently, and they had a discussion with the Department of Revenue, and ultimately the process was not followed correctly by the landowner, and we're trying to discern how to best proceed with the application process that's ahead of us, given this issue that's going on simultaneously. And I believe last time there was a discussion with the applicant about, you know, conditioning the decision accordingly to just confirm that all the appropriate approvals are indeed received before the structure is built. You know, we have received a formal letter from council, but I would be, I would be interested to hear from the applicant about what updated information you have and any discussion that you've had with Sutton LLC about this issue, and if they're planning on submitting their notice of intent, because, you know, it's hard for us to discern how to proceed without having, getting some more clarity on the problem.
Sure. And I mean, I guess I'd answer that two ways. One is just as a threshold matter, it's really not a zoning issue. So there's nothing in the zoning act or your zoning bylaw that would give you the ability to include that as a factor in your decision. If you wanted to condition it on the statute being followed, I don't think we would object to that, but I don't think we would also agree to a particular interpretation of the statute that the landowner might not agree with. The landowner's position, as I understand it from speaking with the landowner, is that the landowner has withdrawn that land from Chapter 61. They did that by notice to the assessor in November of 2022. The land should not be taxed this year. That segment of land, the land they noticed the assessor they were withdrawing, should not be taxed under the tax preference statute for this year because it was withdrawn in time for this particular tax year. And they've also filed their forestry plan showing that land is not part of their forestry protected land, that their forestry tax preference land, I guess I should say. The forestry plan also excludes that land. So that's the question of what the landowner has done. We also understand there's a difference of opinion maybe with the town or with some advisors to the town or some members of the town as to what flows from that. In other words, whether there needs to be a notice and a right of first refusal. And I think there's just a difference of opinion between the landowner and the town as to timing on that, whether it's required, and what happens when the tax year runs. So those are the questions. That's not something I think your board can or needs to resolve in order to address our permit application. We understand it's something that's going to have to be resolved before anything can happen at that site. I know Verizon is not going to want to go forward if they've got a question about whether things have been done correctly, but if they determine they have been done correctly and the town disagrees with that, then there are, other processes that can resolve that, but it's not really resolved through a planning board special permit.
Are you, at this point, are you talking about only the few acres for the site and the road up to it
Yes.
as not the entire parcel?
No, he's still,
Yeah,
my understanding is the entire parcel except for what was carved out for this application, or it was addressed in this application. The entire rest of that parcel is still under the forestry plan, as I understand it. And it's also still under a condition from the Sutton Planning Board.
And did the Sutton Planning Board release the portion you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yes, that is not, they granted a special permit. My understanding is the town intervened in that or appealed that in some way, and then has not pursued that appeal. So that's a final decision. The Sutton Planning Board condition has now been revised to carve out the area that this, the few acres, as you put it, that this cell tower project would cover. The rest of that property is still subject to that condition.
Yeah, well, it seems to me, I think that Grafton at some point turned down right of first refusal on the entire property with, 1 point something million dollar, stated value. I wonder how it could be that much considering how difficult it would be to develop in some way without access. But I don't think the town ever got a chance to look at right of first refusal for the few acres that you're talking about now. And it seemed, as I said before, I know very little about this, but it bothers me a lot. I think the town should have an opportunity to deal with that and make a decision based on first refusal on your however many acres it is, 4 or 5 acres, whatever it is. That concerns me, and I'm not sure. It seems to me that this may not be properly before us because of this ownership and right to offer the land and so on, and that's given me a lot of trouble, and I'm going to probably continue to be concerned about that.
I'm happy to respond to that if you.
Well,
if you'd
yeah, I know you're going to say that you're fine, right?
No, actually, what I'm going to say is, again, I can understand as a citizen or as a member of the board, you want to be concerned, but with respect to this application, it's really not a factor. There's no issue of who owns the land now. We know who owns the land now. It's the Sutton LLC, and we know that Verizon has the right to apply for a special permit, and you have a bylaw provision that lets you do that. If there's a real estate issue or a right of first refusal issue, and if the town is, or whoever's making those making those statements for the town, if their interpretation of the statute is correct, then there'll be a process that has to be followed. If their interpretation is not correct, then people can be concerned about it, but the law says what it says. So we can't resolve that in this proceeding. It's not proper to resolve that in a special permit proceeding. But I do agree that it will have to be resolved before a tower can be built there, and that the landowner is going to have to resolve it with the town, or it's going to have to be resolved for them.
I think that my sense is that in your application, you have to have permission from the landowner to be applying. And my problem is that I don't think the landowner has, or I'm concerned that the landowner doesn't have the authority or the ability to properly give that permission. And it's beyond me. I'm an engineer, I'm not a lawyer. So anyway, be aware that one board member is troubled by all of that.
And Justin has.
Okay. I don't have any information on the size of this antenna array now. Even the drawing says not to scale, but it strikes me as it being quite substantially larger than the ones we're accustomed to. And so it will be probably quite imposing compared to what we're accustomed to on these towers, and I'm interested in understanding that as we go along.
And part of that was what the photo simulation study was showing you too.
The photo simulations, I've been out and looked at the balloon tests and whatnot, and my sense is that it is a problem from some areas as far as comporting with what our bylaw looks for the, you know, the landscapes and all of that, and not imposing on the landscapes. We've done our best to keep the antennas down out of broad visibility in areas where the visual impact is serious. Again, tonight's not. I'm not going to solve that tonight, but I do continue to have concerns about that. I don't know about any other board members. I have Justin.
Yeah, so I think, Bob, I share your concerns over whether this is probably before us. I am concerned that, like, if the town typically would have the right of first refusal based on the lot and what's there, but it also strikes me that if it needs to go for first refusal and we approve a permit, that could then make the land theoretically worth more of the purchase and sale agreement or whatever, more than what it would otherwise be if we hadn't voted on a permit application. So I would really love to see what our town attorney says on, is this properly before us? How should we act going forward? I think that is something that I would love to hear from our town attorney on what is the proper procedure. And I recognize the applicant has a opinion that shouldn't matter for us to vote on this, and I understand that, and I'm partially concerned as well that this has to be resolved before something happens, and then it's a separate issue. But if we approve this, and then there's a difference in opinion, where does that leave us as a board and us as a town with regards to this possibly going up with the difference of opinion between the current landowner and the town?
Yeah,
But
I think those of us who have questions about this really need to have a conversation with our council. And I know that she's otherwise occupied this week because some of us are occupied with her on a case. So it's going to be a few days before there's any opportunity to do that. Probably, that's probably, I would think that, I don't know whether that would be an executive session or whether that would, we got to figure that one out first, whether that would be open session. But in any case, I think we have to have the conversation.
That's fine. I would just say in response to Mr. Wood, my point is that I think if you were to deny the permit on that basis, it would be overturned. That's not a valid basis for denying a zoning permit. And so you'd still be back in the same position where the price of the property, whatever it is, if the town has a right to first refusal, the price would be determined however it would be determined. I don't think you change the outcome by denying the permit. I think by denying the permit, you on that ground, you would just be improperly denying a permit, and it would be subject to being overturned on that basis. So I don't think you get anywhere with that strategy. But I do understand that the town and members of this board and others, I guess, are concerned about this being done in the proper statutory way.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to. I'm not going to prejudge what that proper statutory way is. Your town council may have an opinion. You may have an opinion, but ultimately it's going to be either what the landlord agrees to do or what a court tells the landlord to do. That resolves it.
Yeah, it's just that I think that part of our process does determine that something is properly coming before us. And that's where there may be, I feel like there's an implication.
And to be super clear from what I was meaning, I'm not to be super clear from what I was meaning, I am not suggesting that we should deny this just because we want the town to purchase it for a lesser price. That's to me ridiculous. It should be denied on the merits of it, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it is properly before us because I don't want to approve a decision that we should not have acted on to begin with. And that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, Fiona has her hand up.
Fiona.
I just wanted to make a comment about how we did try and get in touch with council, and we are continuing to work with council to get a formal opinion. She is not a wireless expert, but I did want to pose a question. I know Mr. Maxon is not a lawyer, but if he had a suggestion on something of this nature and had any experience with this, maybe we can try and get some guidance there, because we're not going to be able to get an opinion from town council, as the chair said, for a little while. And I also know that there's federal regulations that are involved here that limit the board and what they can and can't do. And I'm just thinking, if we could get Mr. Maxon's perspective from the federal side, the board, we just need to know, we need to try and get some clarity there, because the board has to make a decision eventually, and we want to make sure that we're aligning with all our required regulations.
Yeah, and when we, at some point while we're talking with Mr. Maxon, I'm going to want to talk about what we just got here listening to about the coverage maps and so on. I read or tried to read his report from very recent days, and my head ended up spinning about all these different coverages in different directions and how to weigh that and what part of that is our consideration and so on. But since you mentioned him, maybe we'll do one thing at a time. First with Fiona and Mr. Maxim. Do you have anything with respect to what Fiona was just saying?
Hi, David Maxon with Isotrope, working for the board on this matter. I guess the other thing I would do is turn a question around to you, and that is, what is the current closing date for your shot clock? Is it it's a straight 150-day shot clock for new construction? Has the applicant given you any extensions up to this point? And if so, what is the date by which you're supposed to make a decision under the federal process?
The application package was submitted formally on June 28th. The applicant's been continuing because we've needed more information.
And the applicant has been extending the shot clock with those requests. Is that correct?
I would think so, yes.
Our form,
we can ask the applicant what they think.
Our forms that they ask on typically recognize that they're tolling the
I
dates.
agree with that. Yeah, we filled out a form and requested a date certain for continuance. And I think implicitly or explicitly, that would toll for those weeks when we went from one hearing to another.
Yeah. How many times?
Okay.
How many times have we?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. How many times have we continued?
I think we've continued this one 3 times.
3 times. So there's been a
we had a July
good bit
hearing. It was continued till September 9th, and then we continued it again for a balloon test that didn't happen correctly, and then we continued it again.
So that's all.
Balloon test. Yeah.
That's all involving tolling of.
Yeah, well, it involves your form. Yes.
Right. To be precise, the words on the continuation request are, I understand that this request will stay any and all applicable time periods for review.
Right. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, David.
Okay, so that's good to hear, because otherwise it's close to 150 days from when the application was filed. So that's good that you have that additional time. It sounds to me like you have a question for council that I can't answer and Fiona can't answer. And the applicant has their answer, but you want to get an answer from someone on your side of the court. basketball court, that is. And it would just seem to me that, what I'm sensing is the applicant would like this process to move forward. And I understand, it's understandable that, but if this question is something that needs an answer from town council before you go ahead and potentially make a decision that you shouldn't have made, then it seems like even if the applicant weren't to extend the shot clock one more time, it seems like you have plenty of time to do this, to deal with this, and get an answer from council, and then you can be more certain that whether or not you have something that's properly before you. But as Fiona said, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to wade into the whole question that has been discussed in the last number of minutes.
Okay. Now then,
I think we were gonna answer a question about the antenna array size.
well, okay. It looks like there are actually a considerable number of antennas on there. There are eight major ones, but then there's some other stuff too that are antennas.
Well, there's 12 total.
There's 12 total. I don't think the number of antennas have changed.
No, no, we had three sectors, and
Yeah, you had 3 sectors.
We had
Okay.
3 times 4, and
Yeah.
now we have 4 times.
So I can explain. So going from the 3-sector site to the 4-sector site, there are changes. One of the main changes is the size and configuration of the platform. Okay, so the original one was triangular in shape, about 12.5 feet across. This one's square, 12.5 feet across.
Okay,
So it's the same width, but obviously there's a difference in shape from the square to the thing.
and
Now,
how tall and how
the
tall
height is basically the same because the height is basically, there's a pipe that allows the antennas to be mounted. So that the pipe would be the same. So the major difference is going from a triangular shape to a square shape. And that's so you can get the 4 sectors rather than the 3. What the RF has done here is previously they had 12 antennas on 3 sectors. Now they have 12 antennas on 4 sectors. But you are correct, there's another piece of that, which are the radios, and that's what you're seeing behind. Previously, there were 2 radios per sector, 6 total. Now, because of that extra sector, there's 2 more additional radios. But these are generally fairly small, and they kind of tuck in behind the antennas, which are larger in size.
Okay.
Although not to scale, as you pointed out, on D2 there is a dimension there. It's called out on the type of platform, the 12.6, in case you were wondering.
You know how hard it is to read all these drawings?
Oh, I believe you.
This is my good screen.
Oh, yeah.
Not the one I use at home.
Understood.
When I have this screen,
Yeah.
like you do.
When you see them on the plans themselves that are to scale, it is to scale. It's just on the detail itself. We're calling out the model rather than the.
Yeah, but I was even less able to figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. There's definitely a lot of information, but that's the main difference. The triangular shape, still 12.5 aside to the square.
Okay,
There you go.
good, thank you.
Yep.
Now, at some point, we're gonna have other people be able to comment.
We wanted to hear from Mr. Maxon's
Right.
report, I think you had mentioned.
Yeah.
We want to respond to that.
The all the coverages and how they impact our decision to some degree. I'm not sure whether we're looking at how all of this deals with coverage within Grafton, or whether we have to be looking at coverage changes, improvements in other communities too. And I don't really understand how that plays out. David.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have the floor. And for this hearing, I'm actually in front of my computer and looking at the fine print. So apologize for not being there tonight. I got waylaid in another town in Massachusetts and couldn't make it to Grafton on time. Yeah, let me summarize this way. This, as you could see from the topographic map that Mr. Vellante pointed out, this is a hill. It's a great spot for a cell tower. It is so great that they're able to use 4 sectors to provide coverage in 360 degrees of coverage. That extra 4th sector divides the coverage up so that they can handle more capacity in each sector, because each sector is covering a narrower swath of the circle. So in that respect, it's a good spot. There's no doubt about it. Second, I think it's pretty clear to me, and I think should be clear in the record, that this part of Grafton, this sort of lower left corner of the town, between Millbury Street, Main Street, and Route 122, essentially, needs service. It needs to have its own coverage. As Mr. Vellante pointed out, the existing coverage is splotches of coverage from very, very distant sites, relatively speaking. So those splotches of coverage in Grafton, the yellows and the oranges and the reds, are actually kind of sucking down the capacity of cell sites that are pretty far away and trying to serve their immediate surroundings. So I think from a capacity perspective, as well as it was suggested, just from a quality of service perspective, where if you're driving along Main Street, for instance, you go from yellow to orange to red, or Follette Street, you go from nothing to red to orange to nothing to yellow, and it's a very haphazard way of providing service. So those are the 2 key things. The spot is fantastic for Verizon because it has such a commanding view in almost 360 degrees of coverage. It's got a little bit of a shadow to the north because it's not on the summit of the hill. And second, in that lower left corner of Grafton, there is a need for a facility. So the simple question is simply, with this reduction in height and with these new photo simulations, does it appear that the applicant has done enough to mitigate visual impact of the proposed facility? And if so, then you may need not look any further. On the other hand, we are pretty certain that there's no other site like this that would put coverage into the 3 towns, Sutton, Millbury, and Grafton, in the way that this proposed facility does. So any other solution, any alternative, is going to have to be probably 2 sites or more, depending on how you cut the pie. So keeping that in mind, we have, and now I get to the complicated situation. The elephant in the living room is the fact that there is a site that was made available by the town to wireless carriers to build a cell tower at 21 Follette, and we've talked about this before. It does not provide coverage to Sutton or Millbury, but it would provide substantial coverage in substantially the same area. It's not identical, and as Mr. Vellante said, that when you have coverage, you have little pockets where you don't reach, and the same would be for a tower at 21 Follette as for the proposed tower in this lower left corner of the town. So that could be an alternative. Now, it's also a be careful what you wish for kind of question, because we haven't done a visual impact analysis of 21 Follette. We don't know whether it's equally obnoxious, more obnoxious, or less obnoxious to the community than the proposed tower. So, so you have those kind of two questions about 21 Follett. It's apparently an available site for a cell tower for a variety of reasons, but we don't know about its visual impact, and we don't know whether the applicant's prior comments about how they would not be able to reach Sutton and Millbury from 21 Follett, whether that's sufficient to rule 21 Follett out as an alternative, which that's a question I can't answer. So kind of that's what you have. You have the simple and the complicated, depending on really ultimately what your feeling is about the reduced visual impact of the new proposal before you, the new height.
Do you recall what height was being talked about when coverage was looked at for 21 Follett?
There's a coverage map, I think it's on the record, that was done earlier in the process, comparing different heights from 21 Follett, from like 96 feet to 136 feet or something like that.
To 165, David. It goes to 165 feet.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, that's a question of it's the same question of trade-offs. How many carriers do you want on it, and what's the minimum that you could get away with? Now, also keep in mind that height is not necessarily a determinant of visual impact. It depends on the context of the location. And as the chair pointed out, the town has worked pretty hard over the years to get towers in locations where you can't see them, or you almost can't see them. To kind of protect from those real stark skyline kinds of views. And you have to go through that same process at 21 Follett to figure out what the sweet spot is between coverage and tower height / visual impact, because I don't know that we have any information about that on the record. So considering that as an alternative, it would be helpful to pursue that and see whether it would work. But I think the signals we've gotten from the applicant so far are that because it doesn't reach Millbury or Sutton, that it's a non-starter from their perspective. Perhaps we can ask them to verify that. Otherwise, in some cases, applicants have agreed to do a little bit of due diligence on an alternative site in order to see if the town and the applicant can come to an agreement on the alternative before closing the record.
So, Dave, can I ask Mr. Max that question through you?
Sure.
In your report, you're talking about coverage to Grafton, but when I look at the plot that it is in the record, I guess Keith said it's like Exhibit 11. There was a alternate height study done at that site, so people ran the C-squared ran the coverage at different heights and showed what the overlay would be. And when I look at that, the coverage along Millbury Street in Grafton, which was a pretty significant part of what Verizon's trying to cover here, even at the highest height, even at 165 feet, there was no coverage. There was a large gap remained from that location. So from that standpoint, to me at least, it does not look like it's a comparable alternative even in Grafton. And as you pointed out, it doesn't really help with anything on the west side of Grafton or into Millbury or Sutton, but also north to Millbury Street. So I want to know if you wanted to comment on that.
Through the chair, if
Yes.
that's okay, I'd be happy to respond. Yes, indeed. As Mr. Volante said, that no cell site is perfect. So sometimes there are trade-offs. And if Millbury Street is a main goal of the proposed facility, then the proposed facility is in the wrong spot because it looks like it leaves a couple of gaps as well. They're smaller, but it's not perfect on Millbury Street. So what could Verizon do? Well, if there's a stretch of Millbury Street that's in a small pocket that's devoid of coverage, they can put in some small cells to fill that in, just to do targeted fill-in, which is sometimes done. So I don't consider that the difference in coverage on Millbury Street, comparing some of the different heights at 21 Follette with the proposed facility, is fatal to the idea that 21 Follette is a potential alternative.
And I am not clear again where Grafton's responsibility for not not impeding the provision of services reaches. Are we only really responsible for coverage within our town, or are we responsible for the applicant to be able to provide services they want in other communities? And I don't know how the law and all of that works at all in this. But I think isn't that the question that we come down to, whether we're impeding, whatever the words are, impeding the ability.
Prohibiting service. You may not want to hear this from me, but you can probably guess how I'm going to answer that question, which is the whole purpose of the Telecommunications Act was to allow municipalities to regulate up to a certain point, but not to prohibit service. And it was intended to prevent this kind of balkanization where every town said, I'm only going to allow coverage in my town, because these networks don't understand municipal boundaries. They work by connecting one cell site to another. So I don't think you would be on strong ground if you denied a permit, for example, because it covered a gap, an existing gap in an abutting town, because you didn't think you had to provide coverage outside of the town. So,
But you just said prevent coverage. You didn't say, an obligation on a community to not prevent coverage.
It's a prohibition
and I
of
don't
service.
know.
Yes.
Someplace people do that. People are experts about that, I'm sure, but not me.
Yeah, it's prohibition of service is the what the law requires. You cannot prohibit the provision of service. So if this is the way to fill the coverage gap, the reasonable way to fill the coverage gap that exists, then denying this risks a prohibition of service.
So a company could not have any problem within a particular community, but still be able to go in there and build a big tower so that they could provide service from there to other communities, without any regard to the community that's being impacted by the tower.
Could they do that if it would be?
Is that what the law is? That
yes, if it would be a prohibition of service. Otherwise, yes, they could do that.
Okay, my head hurts.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just weigh in as an engineer and also somebody who's worked with planning and land use perspectives on this, I would also point out that cellular networks do not pay attention to zoning, but people applying for cell towers have to pay attention to zoning. And so oftentimes compromises will be made in order to get a cell tower on a site that's zoned and available for it, as opposed to other sites. And I'm just saying this in general. And what happens when you build a cell tower in a spot where you can't get that coverage in that pocket that you want coverage, you put something else up over there. So, for example, if you can't reach Millbury from an allowed site in Grafton, that's allowed under zoning, you still have the option of going to Millbury looking for a site. So it's not necessarily, from my perspective, as an engineer, prohibitive of providing service to not be able to serve some distant location in Millbury from Grafton. But it's something that has to be worked out in the court. What are the facts of that particular case? What is the context? of the denial or the alternative and alternatives in this case. Is it inappropriate to expect a wireless carrier to do 2 3-sector towers instead of 1 4-sector tower in order to get the coverage that it needs? And I'm certain there's no pat answer to that question, that is really dependent on the evidence before you and the decision that you make, and ultimately what the court thinks of that decision. So this is another thing that you might inquire counsel for some sort of advice on.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm any closer than I was. Did you have something?
No, I just want to point out that Justin has his hand, but
Oh, Justin.
Yeah, so I think from my standpoint, just to, say number one, I don't know exactly where the law falls on, can we say no because it doesn't substantially increase the coverage in Grafton? But it would, let's say, do it in, Sutton, or something. And I don't know exactly where the law falls in that, but I personally don't have a concern that if the demonstrated need is in a neighboring town, that the tower that is in targeted for Grafton to go up, it will meet our zoning requirements and other conditions that we would typically set for a tower. I don't have a opinion to the negative that says, okay, 99% of the coverage is in neighboring town rather than Grafton that it's supporting, and that to me is a good neighbor kind of general planning and design for stuff. So the tower's going up in Grafton and cover Sutton, if it actually can demonstrate that need, I don't think that's an issue. Similarly, if a tower is going up in Sutton and cover Grafton, I don't foresee that Sutton would necessarily have an issue. Maybe they would, but that's my general thought of how I approach the thought of this.
I'm pretty sure some of us anyway are not going to be completely clear tonight. We do have a limit on our meeting to 10 o'clock unless we vote to extend, and I think we may have people who want to comment on this. Is there anything more from board members right now?
I have one quick question is, I believe that there might be some residents in Grafton that have like a well in that area that is shared with that property, and there's like an arrangement, I think, with Sutton LLC. So one of my concerns is that just if any of those kind of agreements get disrupted or anything like that, just that's just one concern that I have.
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm not really aware of what you're asking about. Do you have any more details about?
I think on the deed it says that one of the abutters has a well, that they access the well on the property that belongs to Sutton LLC, and in the deed it says that they have access to the well water. If there was any sort of like change in the property, that arrangement would continue to the buyer. So that was the only thing that I had noticed. That I just wanted to be I was just concerned about that any current resident that is using well water. I don't think it's near the site. I don't think it's going to be impacted by this project, but it was just one thing that I had caught my eye.
Yeah, that's news to me. I don't know, Jesse, have you?
as far as I'm aware, it's not near the site. It's further towards Sutton, on the Sutton line of the parcel.
You're not going to be heard by the people watching us on television. You're lucky I can hear you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I heard tell of that. I believe I spoke with the owner about that. My recollection is that the area is further west on the property, across the wetlands from us, towards the Sutton line. Where that, yeah, where that cursor, yeah, down in that region. And I think it's, several hundred feet away, 400 or 500 feet away from where the proposed site is. So I do not think it will affect it. That's what I know.
Yeah. Whoever ends up owning that portion of the land will have to deal with that.
Yeah, my understanding it's a private well that's on on the abutter, or excuse me, it's an abutter using the well that's on the Sutton LLC property
Yeah, but
through agreement.
I'm not sure I see how it impacts what we're doing.
I don't believe that it does, but
Okay. Okay,
if it did, for example, I think the concern was if the driveway went through it or you're putting the tower near it. But I believe we're well outside the 100 feet from that.
the owner of that, can do whatever you call it, but legal obligation can pursue it if it comes to it. Did you?
Yeah, one question on, going back to the photo simulation for a moment. The previous photo simulations that we looked at earlier this year had several photos from aerial circle in that area, that little development in Sutton. And I noticed this current photo simulation did not visit those streets at all, and didn't even comment on a reason why those were excluded. I'm curious as to, because that was the one place I remember that the tower was most prominently visible from that particular neighborhood.
That subdivision.
Its omission from this photo simulation has me wondering why.
Yeah, that was not something that was asked for. I think they did give a reason. I think what they said was because it said private property or private road, they didn't try to access that area.
This is a subdivision, and the road's private because the subdivision hasn't been accepted yet?
I'm just telling you what they said.
Is that what we're talking about?
I think it's the condo project. But in any case, yes, they did not go up there to my knowledge.
Okay, because that's the place that I had problems with,
Yeah,
I
and
think.
I think we could stipulate a 155-foot tower is gonna look, we tried to hypothesize those before. It's gonna look that much less than the 165. It'll be visible. It'll be.
It struck me when I was up there and I took pictures, which are probably in the.
Yep.
That it did bother me. It was prominent enough to be an issue. Okay, anybody, any other board or staff before, is there anybody from the public who?
Hello.
Name and address.
Adam Ray, 42 Follette Street. And I brought a little visual aid here of Lazy Hill. See that?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
This is the hill. And just to let you know,
We cannot hear him.
this is the tower. Locations about here. So, being a ridge, right now, this was about a month ago or so. Right now, if you look up here, this is blue sky.
They can't hear them.
The problem is that the camera that people out
Okay.
there are watching on is that one up there.
Sorry about that.
Yes, it'd be great if there was a way for us to make this work.
So
better.
anyways, this is a, what I would call a scenic ridge in an important scenic area of Grafton, which our bylaws protect, explicitly protect. And it's the purpose of our bylaws to protect these visually sensitive areas and neighborhoods from blighting caused by inappropriate cell tower site locations. I think the balloon tests have been a little sketchy, to say the least. The last one was performed in the rain. The one before that, I guess, was inaccurate, and the one before that was blowing all over the place. So I went to their site location, and they have a site location of 478 feet, and the elevation of Lazy Hill, I believe, is 538 feet. So that's a difference of 60 from their site location to the top of the hill. Now, if they have a proposed tower height of 155, would that mean that 95 feet of the proposed tower height would be above the highest part of the ridgeline? And they get 20 feet free and another array system. They don't have to ask permission. That's just by law. So they have a potential of having 115 feet above the ridge line. If they add on that 23, they can have 150, I believe, they have 115 feet of potential exposure above this ridge line. And this ridge line, in about a week, you can start to see the ground up there. That's how steep it is. So there is no protection from the trees at 115 feet. And as you go down the hill, you just add feet to it. As you go down the ridge line, I would think you just add feet. That's at 538, the top of the hill. So I'd just like to know how you can stick above the ridge line 115 feet with potentially 4 stacked arrays and it not be visible. And our bylaws state that these sites should be below ridge lines. This will not be below ridge line just by doing the math, I think. 538, 478, proposed height 155, potential height 175, which either means 95 feet of the proposed tower height will be above the ridge line at its highest point, or 115 feet. And no special permit can be granted that is not in harmony with the intent of our bylaws, which is to protect sensitive scenic areas such as Lazy Hill. Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Ray a couple of questions through you?
Okay.
Okay, is that taken from your property? It doesn't look like it's taken from the road, right? That's just taken.
No, that's taken from my property.
Okay, and did you take any pictures during the balloon test?
Did we take pictures during the balloon test? Not this one. We took them the other times. We've got pictures we can supply to the board.
Yeah, you pretty well hit on the essence of my concerns about what our bylaw says and what we're supposed to do. And how that interacts with all of this. And we need raises in our pay for this. I think a 50% increase on a zero.
What's interesting too about the FCC laws, if you go and read them, it's interesting that Verizon's council, when they went to Sutton to take the land from Grafton to put the cell tower on, in their what's the word I'm looking for? In their opening statements, they cite case law, and they cited about the effect of effectively prohibiting cell service. But it says effectively prohibiting cell service in that town. And our alternative site does not have the effect of prohibiting cell service in our town. And that's all I've got to say about that. But if you go back to the Sutton and what they proposed to Sutton, that case law is in it, or it was put in there by them to show that.
Is information on that in our record, or have you?
It's in the Sutton minutes, and I've given some of the Sutton minutes, and well, I did it in the past. You know how they took, that was in the previous years before this one.
It probably would be helpful if you could be sure that the information you're talking about is documented and into our record, so we have it as part of the case.
Yeah, no problem.
This case.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else right now? Anybody else yes.
I had one other note. I think it was Mr. Ray here who had previously submitted a comment. It's in the record as Exhibit 22 regarding his the coverage test that he explained he ran, and where he did a driving around test and experienced no coverage problems. I have an idea of how to explain it or how to discuss that, but I would prefer to have someone who is more knowledgeable than me review that comment and explain its relevance or lack thereof.
Is that something that David would?
I think David would probably be a good person to answer that.
How about you and Fiona and work out?
So I don't.
Question?
Right. I mean, at this point, I would just ask if David could review Exhibit 22 and comment. If you happen to have a comment that you can give us right now, otherwise for the next session.
There's a hand raised on Zoom too.
Okay. I think this is something I'd like to hear what the applicant has to say, because it's them defending their case, and then I can comment on their defense.
Yeah, David will Keith will look at that and will comment. I mean, I think you've been through enough wireless applications by many different carriers to know that if there's really service, they don't bother building a cell tower to provide coverage.
Okay.
And you also, I think, know, and I think it's just it's sort of intuitive that depending on the time of day and the location and the number of people who are using their phones, sometimes you can get some level of coverage from a location sometimes, but not all the times. And wireless carriers are trying to get reliable coverage. So
Can we try to work out whatever response
yeah,
there
Mr.
may
Valenti
be
will respond for the next meeting.
for the next meeting between all the players?
Just want to say one thing.
And there is a hand up on Zoom as well.
We're gonna need to go past that.
I think the key word you're looking at here is substantial gap. And usually substantial gap means you drop the phone call, you can't make it, you can't receive it, and it gets dropped.
Yeah,
I
there's
drove
a lot.
everyone-
There's a lot more to it.
I'm sure,
Even
but
I
it
know
says
that there's a lot more
substantial
to it. Okay, we'll try to get that focused on and maybe responded to.
Yeah, just in the interest of time here, we have a hand up on Zoom, which we'll want to take a comment on that. But before we do that, just to cover us, I will move that we extend this meeting past 10 o'clock.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Mr. Davidson.
No.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously. That makes this a little easier. Now,
We have a Taze Barler with a hand raised on Zoom.
Yes. Hi, Taze Barlar, 60 Follett Street. I'll assume I'm coming in fine unless I hear otherwise. I just wanted to ask that the board also get comfort, as I wasn't fully able to get comfort with the transference of the property. I understand that the entire parcel is not in question, but the hatched portion of the parcel has been either excluded or removed from Chapter 61A. I don't see anything in the documentation which validates that assertion that the applicant made earlier in the meeting, that either the entire parcel or any part of the parcel has been approved to be removed from Chapter 61A. That's over and above or regardless of the procedure to properly make such a request. I don't see where the assertion earlier made in the meeting by the applicant that this portion of the parcel has been removed from 61A, and I would just encourage the board, and thank you for your time, but encourage the board to ensure that that is the facts of the case.
yeah, I think that's part of what we were asking for earlier, further looking at that question.
I do, just to clarify, if I may, because I think I made the statement that was being responded to. The statement was that the property has been removed. That's not something that needs to be approved. The assessors don't approve a removal. The person who's getting the tax benefit notifies the assessor that they're withdrawing a particular property from the benefit of the act. There's a separate section of the statute that deals with the right of first refusal. Totally different process. But the notice that the property has been removed or is being removed from the tax preference statute is just a one-way notice. I give you that notice, and the assessors are supposed to then, for the next taxable year, not give that property that was removed the tax preference. And that was the extent of my statement. That's what's happened so far. It happened in November.
Well, thank you very much. That is very helpful. And I would just, I'll wrap my comment up with, in 2017, and I believe more recently, the the town of Grafton, its representatives have stated that this is not, or this proposed facility is not in accordance with the spirit letter or of the bylaws and the open space either requirement or provisions for this parcel. So with that, I thank you very much for the clarification.
Doesn't this implicate or get involved in conversion of use? Yes.
That's the other part of the statute, that's right.
Right, and that's where the right
That's
comes
where
in.
the right of first refusal would be, and that's where you have a difference of opinion with some other people who take a different view, which is that it
And we're gonna try
hasn't
to
been
get,
converted.
we're gonna try to get some people who actually know something to work on this and come back to us so we can understand it. Anything more tonight? No more hands? No more nothings?
No more hands
Oh,
on Zoom.
okay.
I have nothing more at this point.
Do you perhaps wish to ask to continue the hearing?
If there's more information you would like from us, and I think there were a couple of things we've promised to give you, so we'd like, if you could continue us for the 2-week cycle, that would be great.
I think I just heard a request to continue this to November 27th. And since you are actually present here, we have the form to be filled out. I will proceed to make the motion that the board grant this written request that is about to be submitted to the board to continue this hearing to Monday, November 27th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on. We have, the last two hearings we continued earlier. So now I'm back to general business, bills.
Move that the
I
board.
move we approve them.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Staff report.
Okay, I will be brief. We had the housing production plan forum last Wednesday. That'll be the final engagement activity for the housing production plan update before we submit to the state. We are planning to have a joint meeting between the planning board and the select board on November 21st to approve the plan and then submit the document as well as the minutes from that meeting to the state. So please, if you have not confirmed directly with Natalia, please do so. I think everyone has. We're continuing to move forward with a variety of different projects. I did meet at the Whitney Park site with DPW, Town Administrator's Office, Police, and Fire about creating better connections and improving traffic safety in that area per the report. So we are working on using ARPA funds to improve the connections between the parks via creation of sidewalks as well as crosswalks. This is going to involve doing a meet and bound study that DPW will likely have VHB conduct. One thing that we did find out, and that's in the report, is that there's property lines are a little wonky in the area, which makes it difficult to make any significant changes. So this is why we need to do this analysis and proceed in this manner. And I think that this is a great use of the report and the recommendations within, as well as our ARPA funds, because we cannot really have folks congregating in this area and trying to bring folks in if it's, fundamentally unsafe. So we need to address safety issues before we move on to anything else. And I will keep the board updated. Other than that, I'm working with the Economic Development Commission on a survey that they're planning to launch and hoping to do some business engagement activities in the new year. I will keep the board posted about that. This is relatively new. One thing I did want to bring to the board's attention was there has been some new information about 17 and 27 Upton Street. I think that there's been some contamination found on that site. A tank and some leaching has been occurring. So I'm not, the folks from GSX, I think that they conducted a site visit and found that. They have relayed that to staff. The required planning department has not been informed of any subsequent steps at this stage, but I just wanted the board to be aware that that's what's going on.
Do you know if it's 17 or 27?
It is. Actually, I actually don't. I actually don't know for sure. And I think that they're probably doing more follow up and checking the rest of the site as well, because I think there's concern that there might be more than one tank.
I recall there were issues some years back at the DPW barn. They had underground stuff or whatever, but I was wondering if it's more of that or whether something showed up at 17. Okay, I've interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think it is 17 more so, but I don't want to say that for sure just yet. Yep. We just last couple things, worked with the TA's office to get our capital budget requests in. There's not too much, but we do like to, planning obviously doesn't have a car or, any fancy equipment, but we do like to account for our plans that are to be updated. For example, the last capital budget, we budgeted funds for the master plan. So I put in the update for the open space and rec plan, hazard mitigation plan, housing production plan going forward. Amongst a few other kind of wish list items that I'm happy to talk more about, but nothing crazy. Really, predominantly plan updates and potentially, a car for site visits that would be shared between planning staff and conservation and economic development. But that's definitely a way down the road type of request. And yeah, everything else, obviously my availability this week is going to be limited through the 21st. So just wanted to make an announcement that I will be accessing email intermittently, but we'll be away in Boston working on some planning board related issues. And will try my best to respond to all inquiries in a timely manner. And that's all I have. Thank you.
The date or dates for that were?
The 14th through the 21st at the moment.
Okay, I know. Okay, just, I could do this here or on item 4. I know that you're interacting quite a good bit with CMRPC, but, I'm there a lot, and I keep hearing now about all the opportunities and all the different kinds of funding and get people to apply and, ask and so on. So be sure you're asking for all of the possibilities, because there seems to be an awful lot going on these days in the way of grants and whatnot. Okay, that all? Okay, correspondence. Correspondence?
Sorry.
Nobody has anything on correspondence?
I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry about that.
There was a one thing added, I think. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, this is just something that's circulated, I believe, on an annual basis by the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association. So that is why, we wanted to put in the correspondence. It was addressed to the board. It is kind of a nice reminder about general conduct and Planning Board 101. I'm sure that most of you are all familiar, but for some of the, for Jim, it might be a nice resource to have. So that is that is the bulk of it. Basically, like planning board relations and standard policies and procedures and process really. And I'm happy to also speak to anyone specifically about this if that's something that's of interest to any board member at any time. So that's.
Yep. I've seen
about
that
it.
document now a couple of times. I think it's the
Mhm.
same. I think it's the same circulation, but it's gotten to us through different paths. And I think a person could be confused. It reads kind of like this is a law, this is a requirement on an individual. But I believe it's an example of what those folks think is an appropriate code, and I suppose that it's a suggestion that whoever can adopt such codes in any given place might want to adopt it or something derived from it. And I think that's actually the right way to look at it. It can be, I can see people being confused when handed that.
Yeah, it does briefly talk to something that I believe was just recently ruled on in the courts in Massachusetts about, what we can do or can't do with regards to limiting a public comment. That, as far as topics and tone, I guess. I don't remember where it was in the document now, but I remember seeing it in this circulation of it.
Yep. Well, I try to put in when we have a public comment period or comment on given cases that the comments really need to be relative to either our responsibilities or a particular case, because we're not in the business of providing platforms for anybody to say anything that they want. We're in the business of conducting our various businesses. And I'm with what some of what seems to have happened out there and other places around the country, I'm just a little bit sensitive to that. Okay, anything else? Any other? Okay, that's correspondence. Anything from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC? I think I covered my base.
I have nothing.
Anybody out there, either of you?
I have nothing from the library building committee, and Fiona already talked about the EDC survey.
Okay. And Justin?
Nothing new to report.
Okay. In that case, I don't think there's anything else which may lawfully come before us at this time. We've already extended the meeting past. So that brings me to item 8.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, not debatable.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye.